The boy was 17 years old, and most people who met him for the first time never thought anything remarkable about him. His life looked simple from the outside. He lived in a quiet neighborhood in Japan with his parents and younger sister. His days mostly followed the same routine: school, homework, piano practice, sleep. He wasn't loud or proud. He didn't speak more than needed. Some classmates barely heard him say a full sentence in a week. But behind that soft voice was something growing quietly: a love for music that he never learned to explain. His connection to piano began when he was 6. His mother noticed he often tapped his fingers on the table when music played on television. He would stand near the screen, listening carefully, almost frozen. She thought it was funny, nothing more than a child's curiosity, but she still asked if he wanted to try a piano class. He nodded once, shyly, and from the very first lesson, something changed. He was too small to reach the pedals, and his hands barely covered 5 white keys. His teacher showed him how to curve his fingers, how to sit straight, how to move gently. He copied everything exactly the way he was taught. He was quiet, but he listened with complete attention. The teacher told his mother that he was not an ordinary beginner. He wasn't fast, but he was deeply focused. He was not distracted even for a second. At home, he practiced more than he needed. His mother would call him for dinner and he would say, "Just one more minute." That 1 minute turned into 5, then 10, then 20. His father sometimes walked past the room and saw the boy counting beats softly, moving his fingers slowly, repeating the same bar again and again until it sounded clean. When he turned 8, his parents bought him an upright piano. It was not new and had scratches on the side panel, but to him it was beautiful. The moment it arrived in the house, he touched it gently like someone meeting a long-lost friend. He didn't ask for toys or gadgets after that. He asked for new sheet music, metronomes, books about composers. He listened to piano recordings on an old speaker and imagined himself someday playing like those performers he heard. But even with his talent, he didn't enjoy being in public. Recitals made him nervous. His hands would shake, and he would swallow repeatedly, trying to hide the fear rising inside. His teacher tried comforting him, saying everyone feels nervous, but he would look down and say nothing. His parents wanted him to enjoy music, not suffer from it. So when he cried quietly after one recital because he made a mistake in the middle of the piece, his father said gently, "Mistakes are part of learning." But to him, mistakes sounded like loud echoes, louder than applause. Still, he did not stop practicing. If anything, he practiced harder. When he was 12, he entered his first competition. His parents did not expect him to win anything, but they knew participation was important. He walked on stage wearing a plain shirt and dark trousers. The hall was large and filled with strangers. He sat, took a breath, closed his eyes, and began playing. To everyone's surprise, he played with softness that didn't sound like a child's touch. His tone was warm and controlled. At the end, he didn't bow fully, just a short nod. He walked back to his seat as if nothing had happened. He did not win first place. He got third. When his number was called, he looked confused, almost unsure if the announcement was correct. His teacher said afterward, "This is just the beginning." His mother hugged him outside the building, proud without saying many words. As he grew older, music became more serious. His teacher changed. His new teacher was known for strictness. She expected long scales, intense sight reading, and emotional depth, not just clean technique. She told him his playing was beautiful, but sometimes empty. That comment stayed with him. How could sound be empty? That was when he began searching for feeling inside his music. He began studying each piece as more than notes. He read about composers, their lives, losses, struggles, illnesses, friendships. He tried to imagine what they must have felt while writing. He understood that each line of music carried a part of someone else's heart. But life outside music was different. At school, he remained quiet. He never raised his voice, never argued, never tried to stand out. He was not bullied, but he was invisible. He walked through hallways unnoticed, ate lunch alone or sometimes next to others who talked among themselves. No one thought of him as talented because he didn't show anything. His notebooks were always neat. He never forgot homework. Teachers liked him because he caused no trouble. Anytime someone asked what he liked to do, he just said, "I play piano." Most replied casually, "Oh cool," then continued with their conversation. He did not mind. He didn't play for attention. At home, evenings were quiet. His father watched news. His sister studied. His mother cooked while humming a song from memory. He sat at the piano, repeating parts of Chopin, Brahms, or Beethoven. Sometimes he smiled faintly at a bar that sounded better than before. Sometimes he sighed because something still didn't feel right. One rainy evening, his teacher told his mother during lesson time, "He is ready for something bigger." She believed his skill was now too advanced for small competitions. She said he needed a real challenge, a stage where his calm nature would either break or rise. The boy overheard their conversation, though they didn't know. He didn't feel excitement. Instead, he felt something heavy, not fear, but pressure. He asked himself if he could handle disappointment again. But deep inside, he knew he wanted to try. He wanted to see if what he practiced in silence could stand in front of strangers. That night after dinner, he sat at the piano again. Even though his parents told him he practiced enough, rain tapped against the window. The room was dim. He placed his hands on the keys and started playing slowly. The sound was soft, like falling water. His father stood at the doorway for a moment, listening quietly. He didn't say anything, but his face showed pride. From that point, the boy began practicing longer. His teacher chose difficult pieces for him, pieces that required not just excellent technique, but emotional understanding. She wanted him to play like someone who lived through something, not just someone who read notes. His tone changed, his timing changed, his expression changed. When he reached certain passages, he began shaping them differently, adding softness where sadness belonged, strength where courage was needed. Music was no longer just sound. It felt alive, but none of this was visible to the outside world. To others, he was still just the quiet boy who walked to school, sat in the second row, and left early to go to lessons. Yet something inside him had already begun preparing for a moment he didn't know was coming, a moment that would take him far beyond his quiet room, far beyond practice, far beyond the life where no one noticed him. He didn't have a dream of being famous. He just wanted to play without shaking. He wanted to play without fear. That desire alone kept him moving forward. At night, when the house was asleep, he sometimes listened to recordings of great pianists performing Chopin. He imagined himself playing on stages he had never visited, in places he only saw in online videos. He watched performers bow as crowds applauded. He wondered what that must feel like to receive applause, not because you are known, but because your music touched someone. As he drifted to sleep many nights, one thought repeated in his mind: someday, not soon, but someday. That quiet dream would soon find its chance, though he didn't know it yet. His calm days were counting down. His world was about to open, and all the hours of unseen practice, all the silent nights, all the tears from short mistakes, would gather into one future moment, one performance waiting outside the edges of his imagination. The invitation arrived in a quiet way. Nothing dramatic, no loud announcement, no sudden excitement. His mother opened an email one evening while preparing dinner. She paused, read the message again, and called him into the kitchen. He walked over, wiping his hands on his shirt because he had just washed them after practice. She turned the screen toward him. The message came from a well-known international music organization. It said that he had been selected to perform at a global youth piano festival, held in another country. He stared at it, not sure if he read it correctly. The festival was famous for featuring young pianists from many places: Europe, Asia, and even countries he had only seen on maps. They did not invite just anyone. They chose performers after reviewing recordings sent by teachers and music academies. His teacher had sent his recordings without telling him. She wanted the decision to be based on pure reaction, not expectation. His father stepped closer, read the message, and raised his eyebrows. It was clear he did not know what to say. His sister smiled, almost proudly. His mother simply held the device and waited for someone to speak first. The boy looked at it again, trying to understand what it meant. Going to that festival would be his first big stage outside of his country. It would be the first time he played in front of judges, musicians, and strangers who did not know anything about him except how he played. His heart felt heavy, not from fear exactly, but from the size of the moment. He knew this was far bigger than any school recital or regional competition. His teacher came to know about the invitation the next day. She told him that this performance would be important, not because of prizes, but because he would learn how different the world was. She said he needed a piece that would challenge both his hands and his heart. She suggested Chopin, not a simple Chopin piece, but the one that many adults were afraid to perform, the concerto. Chopin carried emotion the way rain carries sound. It was not just fast notes. It was soul, weakness, strength, tenderness, and the echo of someone who wanted the world to listen. That was why his teacher chose it. If he could understand that music and play it with sincerity, then even if he made mistakes, People would remember the performance. He accepted it quietly. He never argued with his teacher. But when he went home, he sat in front of his piano longer than usual. He played the opening of the piece slowly, trying to feel where the emotion was supposed to live. Some parts were deep, thoughtful, and fragile. Other parts were strong like waves hitting against rocks. From that day, life changed. He practiced before school. He practiced after school. He practiced until he was told to stop. His teacher wrote notes on his sheet music, reminding him where to breathe, where to lift his hands, where to press deeper. Sometimes he felt frustrated because his hands could move, but his heart wasn't ready. Music was strange like that. It required both. His parents began preparing for the trip. His father looked at flight schedules and hotel options. His mother asked what clothes he needed, if his shoes were formal enough, if they should buy a new shirt. His sister made jokes that he would become a big star, though she said it in a playful way, not expecting it to be real. At school, nothing changed. No one knew about his invitation. He kept it that way. He did not want attention. He still sat in the same quiet seat, ate lunch in silence, and left the building like an ordinary student. His classmates talked about television shows, games, and tests. None of them knew that he was practicing music written centuries ago for audiences he had never met. He thought about the performance often. He imagined walking onto a foreign stage, adjusting the bench, placing his hands on the keys, and knowing every sound would matter. The thought frightened him sometimes. What if his hands shook again? What if he forgot part of the music? What if mistakes came back the way they once had? But something inside him wanted to face it. He remembered when his teacher said that skill without emotion becomes empty. He wanted to change that part of himself. One evening his teacher decided to test him. She asked him to play the concerto while she sat across the room, and she shut her eyes. That made him uneasy. When someone listens with closed eyes, nothing distracts them. Every weakness becomes obvious. He began anyway. At first his playing was tight, guarded. He was thinking too hard. But as the music moved forward, something softened. His teacher still did not open her eyes. When he reached the sections where Chopin poured longing into the melody, he held the sound longer, as if trying to speak through it. When he finished, he looked at her. She opened her eyes slowly and said, "You are learning to feel. Keep going." It was not praise, but it was hope. However, practicing too much brought its own trouble. One night he noticed pain in his wrist. It wasn't sharp at first, it was dull, like a heavy ache. He pressed his hand gently, stretched his fingers, and shook it. He ignored it and continued practicing. The next morning, the pain was worse. He told no one. He covered it, massaged it when no one watched, and tried to reduce movements between rehearsals. But the concerto was demanding. It required strength, accuracy, and shifting weight across the keys. He pushed through, hoping it would disappear. On the third week, his teacher noticed something wrong. His movement slowed. His fingers didn't press deeply enough. He paused more often. She stopped him and asked what was happening. He said nothing at first, but she repeated the question in a calm voice that sounded more like concern than anger. He quietly told her about the pain. She looked at him with worry. She did not scold him. Instead, she told him to rest his hand. She said he couldn't risk real injury, especially before something this important. He nodded, though inside he was afraid because stopping felt dangerous, like losing progress. At home, his mother applied warm cloths to his wrist. His father asked why he didn't say anything earlier. His sister just watched him silently because she could tell he was upset. He didn't want to talk. He felt like time was moving forward and leaving him behind. The doctor said it was stress from over-practice. Nothing broken, nothing damaging yet. But he needed to rest and reduce repetition. It felt like being told to stop breathing. Music was his daily rhythm, and now he had to slow down. For 3 days he barely touched the piano. He listened instead. He listened to recordings, not to copy them, but to understand what they were communicating. Music sounded different when his hands were still. He wasn't focusing on technique anymore. He was listening with emotion. When his wrist finally improved, he returned to the instrument. He didn't rush. He played gently, letting the sound grow instead of forcing it. Something about that change made his music more human, more natural. He was no longer fighting the keys. He was speaking to them. As the departure date came closer, he packed his things. His father prepared documents. His mother folded clothes in neat stacks. His teacher reminded him to trust the music, not his fear. On the morning of their flight, he sat in the back seat of the car, staring at passing buildings. His stomach felt tight. He held the music score in his lap, not reading it, just touching it because it gave him comfort. The airport was bigger than he remembered. Crowds moved like rushing currents. Voices echoed. Announcements played. He felt small again, like when he stood on stage at 8 years old. But he walked forward without stopping. One step, then another dot. When the plane took off, he looked at the sky from his window seat. He wasn't excited. He wasn't scared. He was simply waiting for whatever this journey would give him. His hands rested on his lap. The air felt still. He wondered if someday he would look back at this exact moment and realize it was the start of something larger than himself. He did not know it yet, but that performance waiting on the other side of the flight would change how the world heard him. The first days in the new country were not what he expected. The air felt colder, the buildings taller, and the streets louder. People walked fast, carrying cases and instruments. Signs were written in different languages. At the airport, he held onto his small bag tightly, trying not to get lost in the crowd. His mother walked beside him, giving short instructions, making sure he stayed close. His father carried documents and asked for directions whenever needed. The hotel room was small but quiet. The boy placed his music sheets on the desk and sat down for a moment without speaking. The long trip had tired him, but he knew rest would not come yet. His mind replayed the fact that soon he would be performing on a stage, much bigger than anything he had seen before. The festival organizers sent a schedule that listed rehearsal hours, orientation, and warm-up times. The moment he saw it, his heart tightened. He would be performing in front of conductors, judges, and an audience full of strangers, people who expected something special, simply because he had been invited. The first rehearsal happened inside a bright hall lined with seats and large curtains. He walked onto the stage with his parents watching from the side seats. The piano stood alone under tall stage lights. He sat quietly and adjusted the bench. His teacher was not there physically, but he could almost hear her saying, "Trust the sound, not your fear." He began playing slowly, letting each note echo across the empty hall. The acoustics were different. The sound bounced back to him much quicker than at home. It felt like the music was surrounding him. He paused, tested the pedal, then started again. His heart settled a little, but once the orchestra joined for rehearsal, things became difficult. The conductor spoke in English, and although the boy understood some phrases, many instructions sounded unclear. He followed hand signals, but when the tempo shifted suddenly, he froze for a second. The conductor stopped the music and repeated instructions, pointing gently toward him. The boy nodded even when he wasn't fully sure. His hands shook slightly. His fingers slipped once, and the tone felt weak. He wished he could repeat silently, but the orchestra waited. The conductor spoke to him again, slower this time. He took a breath and began again. The second attempt was better. Not perfect, but calmer. After the rehearsal, he stayed at the piano, pressing certain keys alone, trying to correct places he had misplayed. A member of the orchestra walked past and said softly, "Take your time. First days are always rough." The boy simply nodded. He did not want to talk. He just wanted to fix what needed fixing. That night he could not sleep easily. He lay on the hotel bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the orchestra parts in his head. He kept thinking of places where he lagged behind, where his hand slipped, where the conductor slowed down because of him. His mother noticed he was restless, sat beside him for a moment, and said, "You already came this far. Be proud of that. The rest will come." He didn't answer, but her words rested somewhere deep in him. The next morning his wrist began hurting again, not badly, but enough to disturb him. He rubbed it repeatedly, stretching the fingers the way the doctor had shown. He tried not to think about it. Pain could wait. Music could not. During the second rehearsal, something unexpected happened. The conductor asked him to stop in the middle of the piece and said, "Don't try to rush the emotion. Let the music breathe." The boy looked confused for a moment. Then the conductor explained that Chopin didn't write this piece to impress people with speed but to speak through the piano. He tried. Again. This time he slowed down a small phrase and let the melody float longer than before. The conductor smiled softly and nodded. The orchestra blended in more naturally, and the music rose into something fuller. The boy felt a small warmth inside, like he was finally speaking the right language. But when rehearsal ended and the hall emptied, he did something that reminded everyone he was still just 17. He sat alone, untouched by applause or approval. He pressed keys slowly, letting the quiet notes fall around him. He practiced the same for bars again and again until he no longer heard hesitation inside them. The day before the performance, the organizers held a welcome session for all young musicians. They gathered in a hall filled with laughter and chatter. Children from many places carried violins, flutes, cellos, and sheet music. Some were loud, others shy. Many were already talking about which schools they hoped to join after graduation. The boy sat in a chair by the wall, listening quietly. A student asked him where he was from. He answered softly, and the student smiled and said they had watched some Japanese performers before and found them impressive. The boy nodded, unsure how to reply. He wasn't used to conversation about himself. When they asked what piece he was performing and he answered, they widened their eyes. "That's brave," someone said. "Most people don't attempt that at this age." He looked down, wishing no one would say anything further. That evening, his father ironed his shirt. His mother checked the program schedule again. His sister called through a video chat and told him that everyone at home was cheering for him. He smiled slightly, not because he believed he would amaze anyone, but because someone believed in him. The night before the performance, he practiced in the rehearsal room one last time. Nobody else was there. He played softly at first, not wanting to disturb anyone on the nearby floors. He touched each key gently, imagining the hall full of silent faces waiting for the first note. He remembered all the mistakes, all the tears from recitals many years earlier, all the comments about his lack of confidence. But tonight, there was nothing left to fix. Whatever he had learned, whatever he had built inside, would need to show itself in one moment. He packed his sheet music, turned off the small lamp, and walked back to the hotel. He slept lightly. The performance day arrived quietly. Morning air felt cold. He wore his formal clothes and combed his hair neatly. His mother pinned his number tag on the inside of his jacket. His father said, "Do your best. Nothing more is needed." The boy nodded. The hall was crowded now. Cameras were set up, lights pointed toward the stage, and seats filled piece by piece. He could hear conversations in languages he didn't understand. He sat backstage holding his sheet music, though he didn't need to look at it anymore. His hands trembled not because of fear alone, but because this stage was larger than anything he had imagined. One student before him performed, receiving applause that echoed through the curtains. His chest tightened. Then the assistant walked toward him and said gently, "You're next." He stood. He walked toward the stage entrance. He could see shadows of audience members, the glow of stage lights, the shine of the black piano waiting. Just as he was about to step into the light, his wrist gave a tiny ache, not painful, but noticeable. It reminded him of the weeks of practice, the long nights, the quiet sacrifices, and with that, something settled inside him. He wasn't here to be perfect. He was here because he didn't quit. He stepped forward. The lights touched him. The audience turned silent. His parents watched from the middle rows, his mother holding her breath. The boy bowed, sat at the bench, placed his hands on the piano, and waited for the conductor's signal. He inhaled once, deeply, and just before the first note, he remembered what his teacher said. Let the emotion breathe. The baton moved, and the music began. The first note floated into the air, soft and delicate. At first, the boy felt a tremor run through his hands. The audience was silent, but he could feel their attention pressing down on him, like the weight of unseen eyes. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound flow. Slowly, the tension in his fingers eased. The first phrase came out smoother than he expected. He began to play more confidently, remembering all the weeks of practice, all the lessons about letting emotion guide the hands. The opening movement of Chopin's concerto demanded precision, yet also subtlety. He leaned into the music, imagining each note as a word in a conversation. Every key he pressed was a sentence, every phrase a paragraph. He wasn't performing to show skill. He was telling a story. As the orchestra joined, the music became larger, more alive. He adjusted to the shifting tempo, following the conductor's gentle hand gestures. At times he felt a surge of fear when a chord demanded speed, but he remembered the nights he had spent alone, training until the movements became second nature. His hands moved automatically, but his mind was fully present, feeling each emotion Chopin had embedded in the music. Somewhere in the middle of the first movement, he hit a tricky sequence. His wrist ached faintly, and he felt the urge to slow down. But he didn't. He took a deep breath and let his fingers find their way. The notes rang out clear and pure, carrying the delicate balance of strength and vulnerability. For a moment, he forgot the audience, the judges, the lights. There was only the music. When the movement ended, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had survived the technical challenges, but he knew the emotional depth had only begun. The second movement, the slow and lyrical part, called for the heart more than the fingers. He leaned closer to the keys, letting the soft melody speak gently. The audience seemed to lean in with him, as if listening through their own memories. Some faces looked moved, some closed their eyes to absorb every note. He felt a warmth inside that he had never experienced before. Tears threatened in his eyes, but he pushed them back, not because he wanted to hide emotion, but because he wanted the music to carry it without interruption. Every soft trill, every pause, every gentle rise and fall was a conversation he had been preparing for his entire life. He remembered his teacher saying that playing music is like breathing, it must be natural. Tonight, it felt like breathing. The third movement demanded energy and rhythm. It was heroic, almost like marching forward despite obstacles. He adjusted his posture, pressed the keys harder, and let his hands follow the urgency in the music. The auditorium seemed to vibrate with the sound. Fingers flew over the keys, yet his movements were controlled, precise. He could see the conductor's hands guiding the orchestra, and they were in perfect sync. The music became a wave, rising and falling, moving everyone in the room. Midway, he felt a rush of adrenaline. The audience's attention seemed to sharpen. Even the tiniest error would be obvious. His hands flew over the keys, each chord resonating with power. In that moment, it was no longer about fear. It was about courage. He was no longer the quiet boy from a small neighborhood in Japan. He was the music itself, alive and moving. A sudden crescendo demanded everything he had. He struck each note with confidence, his fingers bending and stretching, his wrist rolling as he had practiced countless times. The hall was full of sound, full of life. He felt the weight of the audience's gaze, but he welcomed it, knowing they were listening not just to music but to his effort, his dedication. Then came the final bars. Every note had to count. He pressed the keys with care, letting each chord linger for a heartbeat longer than expected. The final chord resonated throughout the hall, echoing in every corner. He held it, letting the sound fade naturally, as if he were leaving a mark in the air. Then he slowly lifted his hands, feeling the silence that followed. The audience didn't move at first. Then, a few soft claps began, growing steadily until the entire hall erupted in applause. Standing ovations. Some people shouted his name, though he couldn't see who. He bowed once, twice, heart pounding, eyes lowered, cheeks warm with relief. He had done it. He had not only played the music, he had lived it. Backstage, his teacher rushed to him. She smiled, her eyes bright with pride. "You felt it," she said softly. "You didn't just play. You spoke." The boy nodded, still trying to catch his breath. He felt the warmth of his parents behind the curtain, their faces beaming with pride. His mother's hands were clasped together. His father's eyes shimmered with quiet emotion. Even his sister, standing slightly behind, had tears in her eyes. He didn't look at the camera crews or journalists. He didn't care about the notes written later. All he knew was the feeling of the music moving through him, the orchestra breathing with him, the audience listening as if time had stopped. For the next few minutes, he stayed on stage, bowing and acknowledging the applause. Then he quietly walked to the side, letting other performers take the stage. His heart was still racing, but there was a calmness now. He had faced fear, pain, doubt, and pressure, and had turned them into something beautiful. Afterwards, in the dressing room, other young musicians came to him. They congratulated him, some shyly, some boldly. They asked how he felt, how he prepared, what piece he would play next. He smiled softly, answering simply, because words could not carry the music he had just shared. He felt connected to them in a silent understanding, another small community of those who had lived and breathed music in their own ways later. As he walked out of the hall, he noticed the night sky through the glass doors. Lights reflected off the city, and the distant hum of life felt gentle. He paused for a moment, looking up. The journey had not been easy. The flights, the rehearsals, the pain, the fear, they all led to this moment. He understood something he hadn't fully grasped before. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. Courage was moving forward, even when the fear was real. That night, in the hotel room, he sat at the piano again, not to practice, not to prepare, but to play quietly for himself. He touched each key softly, remembering the audience, the applause, the conductor, the orchestra. The music felt alive in the room again, but this time it was his alone. He smiled faintly. He didn't need anyone to hear it. He had already shared it in the way that mattered most. Sleep came later, deep and calm. His body relaxed, and his mind replayed the notes, the crescendos, the pauses. For the first time, he felt fully confident that he had crossed an invisible line from a student to a performer, who could speak through music, who could carry emotion from his heart to an audience thousands of miles away. He didn't think about fame. He didn't think about recognition. He thought only of the music, the story it told, and the courage it had awakened within him. This performance had been more than a recital. It had been a journey, a challenge, and a revelation. And he knew that wherever the piano waited for him next, he could meet it with the same calm determination, the same deep emotion, and the same quiet strength that had carried him through the stage that night. After the performance, life seemed to move faster. Videos of the concert appeared online. People from other countries watched them, and soon messages started arriving from musicians, teachers, and fans praising the performance. His parents tried to explain it to him, but he listened quietly, not fully understanding what it meant. To him, the music had been about the moment, not the applause that followed. News outlets picked up the story. Articles appeared online, describing the young pianist as extraordinary, highlighting his emotional depth, technical skill, and courage. Social media users shared clips, commenting on how unusual it was to see someone so young play with such maturity. Invitations from music schools and orchestras came in from different countries. Some offered scholarships, others asked if he could perform in major halls in Europe and Asia. He read the messages, eyes wide, hands resting on the table. It was exciting, but it also felt overwhelming. His parents tried to help him process it. His father said, "You earned this, but remember to take it one step at a time." His mother added softly, "You don't have to do everything, just do what feels right for you." He nodded, understanding their words, but inside he was quietly thinking about what he truly wanted. Not fame, not recognition. He wanted music to continue being a part of him, to speak for him when words could not. The festival continued for a few more days. Other young musicians performed, some winning prizes, some simply learning from the experience. He attended a few performances, observing how others approached their instruments. Some were confident, some nervous, some creative in unexpected ways. He realized that talent alone was not enough. Courage, patience, and understanding of the music mattered most backstage. Some students asked for advice. They wanted to know how he had played the piece so emotionally, how he had handled the orchestra, how he had controlled nerves. He hesitated, unsure what to say. Then he remembered what his teacher had told him long ago. Play from your heart, listen, and never stop learning. That was enough. He smiled and simply said, "Practice, listen, feel it." After the festival, he returned home. The flight was long, giving him time to reflect. He looked out of the window as clouds passed beneath him, thinking about the stages, the halls, the applause, the silence between notes, the feeling of being truly present. He realized that the journey had changed him. He was still quiet, still reserved, but he carried a new confidence inside him. Music had become more than a skill. It had become a language through which he could express everything he felt. Back in his room, he sat at the piano again. The familiar keys welcomed him like old friends. He did not play for anyone, did not think about recordings or performances. He played for himself, letting the music flow naturally. He remembered the festival, the lights, the audience, and felt a quiet joy. Each note felt alive. Each phrase seemed to carry a memory of the journey he had undertaken. School resumed, and he returned to his quiet life. Friends and teachers noticed a change. He seemed more focused, more assured in his movements, yet still humble and calm. He didn't boast about the festival. He didn't need to. Those who saw him play knew something had shifted. Over the next months, he received letters and emails from teachers and organizers worldwide. Some invited him to workshops, others to perform in small concerts. He chose carefully, guided by his parents and his teacher. He wanted to continue learning, not just performing. Every new experience became part of his understanding of music, part of the language he was building to communicate with the world. He began to compose small pieces of his own, experimenting with sounds and patterns he had learned. Sometimes he would play for hours, listening to the way a melody could rise and fall, how a chord could carry hope or sorrow. Music was no longer just interpreting others' compositions. It had become his own voice. One afternoon, his teacher visited and watched him play a new composition. She listened silently, then said, "This is your voice. Keep finding it." Those words resonated deeply. For years, she had guided him, taught him technique, encouraged him to feel the music. Now he could hear his own story through the keys. The boy, now slightly older and more aware of his potential, understood that the world was full of stages, both big and small. Some would be in crowded halls, some in quiet rooms. What mattered was not the applause, not the recognition, but the courage to express himself honestly, to connect with the music, and through it. With others, months turned into a year. He traveled to different cities, performed in small concert halls, met other young musicians, and continued to practice diligently. Each experience added to his understanding of music and life. Each applause reminded him of the moment he first felt the power of playing not for perfection, but for expression. He carried that memory quietly, like a flame that never went out. He still returned home to his quiet neighborhood, to his small piano, to the streets he knew. He played for himself, for his family, for those moments when music alone could speak what words could not. He still had fears, still experienced doubts, but he faced them differently now. He knew that courage was built slowly, over time, through every practice, every note, every challenge. He never stopped dreaming, not about fame or recognition, but about music itself, about touching hearts, about understanding lives, about creating sound that carried meaning. He understood that each performance was a conversation, each note a word, each piece a story. The world had noticed him, but he remained the quiet boy at heart, who listened more than he spoke, who felt deeply, who practiced diligently, and who let music tell the story his voice could not. And in that quiet understanding, he knew that this was only the beginning. Each stage he would face, each audience he would play for, each note he would strike, was another step in the journey of a life lived through music, courage, and quiet determination. The story of the boy who had amazed the world was still unfolding, one note at a time, carrying hope, emotion, and the promise of more to come.